Hello and welcome to Train Signal. You're watching the A+ Technician Operating Systems video. This is part of Train Signal Fast Track CBT video CompTIA A+. In this video, we have a lot of exciting operating system topics to cover. We'll be covering these at the A+ Technician level instead of at the Essentials level as we did previously. So our overall goal in this video is to ensure that the A+ Technicians understand the fundamentals of using, troubleshooting, and maintaining the Windows operating system. Now, many of the topics we'll cover in this video are similar or are the same as the topics that were covered in the Essentials video, but what we're going to try to do is to go into a little bit more detail in each of those topics and leave out some of the more introductory level material. So we'll talk about the Windows OS command line tools, the Windows OS disk structure, Windows GUI tools, optimizing the Windows operating system, performing boot recovery. We'll cover the boot sequence, dealing with error messages in Windows, system utilities for Windows, and preventative maintenance in the Windows OS. Alright, so first off, let's cover the topics that you'll see in the A+ Technician exam. So, as with the other technician level videos, what I've done is I've made the text for each of the different exam topics the color that matches this legend up here. So the IT Technician 220-602 exam, all those topics are in black. All the topics in red are for the Remote Support Technician, and all the topics in blue are for the Depot Technician. So we'll be covering for the IT Technician exam all this material here in black, like that. That's Objective 3.1, and that's where you talk about the command prompt, a number of different command prompt commands like ping, ipconfig, format, xcopy, edit, and attrib. We'll talk about disks and disk structures, files on the disk. We'll talk about how to use some different operating system tools like msconfig, regedit, event viewer, and system restore. We'll talk about file management tools like Explorer and attrib. All right, in the red section here, we'll talk about how to identify the fundamental principles of using operating systems, and you'll notice many of these are the same: the commands, the disks, the files, the disk structure, and the tools, but some of the more specific areas of this topic might be worded slightly different. Then there's Objective 3.2, and that's where we'll talk about installing, configuring, and optimizing operating systems, specifically virtual memory, hard drives, services, startups, and applications. Here in red, we'll talk about installing, configuring, optimizing, and upgrading operating systems. Again, the same topic, but covered from the perspective of the Remote Support Technician versus the IT Technician up here. All right, then there's topic 3.3. That's where we talk about identifying tools, diagnostic procedures, and troubleshooting for operating systems. So all this has to do with troubleshooting your Windows system. Windows, auto restart errors, blue screens, lockups, device failures, how to get into the event viewer, the registry, and using bootable media. All right, so that's what's covered in this video. So with that, we'll scroll back up to the top, and we'll get started by talking about operating system commands. So the first command here is CMD, or the command tool. If you go to Start, Run, type in CMD, you get the Windows command prompt. It's that easy. Now inside the prompt, there's a number of built-in commands. If I type help, I get a list of those commands. So for example, one of the commands might be ver for version, or xcopy, or rename, or time, or set, which sets variables inside the Windows operating system and shows you the variables you have. I'm going to type help, and I'm going to pipe that to more. See, that way I can see this page at a time. So last time I didn't get to see these commands up here, but there's important commands like dir for directory, del for delete, let's see, check disk, change directory, attrib, and at to schedule at jobs. Let's see what else. We've got echo, find, format, if, And there's more. That's what I just used. There's the path, and we went through all these down here. So say I want to mess with the time in Windows. What happens if I type time? Shows me the current time, then asks me if I want to set the time, and that's it. Say I want to set the date. Well, there's the date command as well. Let's see, dir shows me my directory. cd backslash takes me back to the root directory. Let's see, dir here shows me what's in the root directory. I can cd into a directory by cd and then the directory, like cd Windows. I can also add on to that a subdirectory, like cd Windows System32. If I type cd ... I'm taken back up a level in the directory tree. And if I use dir, there's a number of command line switches to all these different commands. So like dir /?, shows me all the different commands or command line options right up here available for dir, and you can see there's a lot of them. So I can do like dir /p, because this is a very long directory listing. So dir /p gives me this list page at a time, so that I can press a space bar after each page and scroll through these files. If I press Control C, that breaks out of just about any DOS command. Let me scroll over. Let's see, what else do we need to know here? Attrib. Attrib shows me the file attributes on all these files. You can see they all have the A, which is the archival. But if I cd into the root directory and I type attrib, you can see that some of these have other special attributes, like system, hidden, or read only. That's the SHR. So I can use attrib to unhide files or make them not read only, like attrib -H on, let's see, boot.back. So first let's type dir, and notice here there's no boot.back. So if I type attrib -H boot.back, oh, it says it's not resetting the system file. Let's do a dir again. It's not going to let me do that because it's a system file. So first we have to take off the system file. Oh, not resetting hidden file. So perhaps we have to do these in conjunction with each other. Perhaps we have to separate them. There you go. There you go. So it took me a little trial and error to get the syntax exactly right, which you can see that's some of the difficulty in the Windows command line interface, is you have to get this syntax exactly right. So I had to do attrib space -H space -S to remove the hidden and the system file attribute both at the exact same time before it would remove those. Now if I type dir, you can see boot.back shows up because it's not hidden anymore. So if I type attrib, you can see here's boot.back, and the S and the H have been removed. But the catch that I didn't realize at first was I had to remove these at exactly the same time. So if you type attrib /?, you can see here's all the different options for attrib, and it'll tell you, hopefully how to get things done without having to do too much trial and error like I just had to do. All right, so that's attrib. There's edit. Let's type edit. Okay, first it says we must select a region. I'm going to say OK there. But basically what I want to show you here in edit is that this is a text-based text editor. So when I say that it doesn't have the normal graphical interface you're used to with, say, like Windows Notepad, and in fact edit has really been replaced with Windows Notepad. I would use Notepad exclusively just to edit text files if that's what you're doing, such as your boot INI. But here if you hold down Alt and press F or any of these letters up across the top that are highlighted, you can get into these drop-down menus. And surprisingly, your mouse even works in here. So this is edit. It's just a text editor. So I can type things like, this is a test. I can go up to File, Save, and here I can save it as test.txt. Okay, I'm going to exit, and then I'm going to type. That's another command to know, to type out text files, test.txt. There it is. This is a test. So we created that with edit. We can also edit it, of course, with Notepad. Notepad test.txt. All right, so you see here, same thing as the edit command, but Windows GUI mode is where you can run the Notepad application. All right, what other commands do we need to know here? Edit, copy, and xcopy. So copy would be like copy test.txt to test1.txt. It says one file copied. Xcopy is like copy, but it has a number of other options. A lot more command line switches are available with Xcopy than they are with copy. So same thing, copies files, but it also copies directory trees, and that's something that copy does not do. Okay, format is used to format a floppy drive or a hard drive. ipconfig is used to show the status of my Ethernet or wireless interfaces, get my IP address. So here's my IP address on this adapter. Here's my IP address down here on this adapter. I have a number of adapters. If I do ipconfig/all, scroll up here to my primary adapter, you can see my DNS server, DHCP server, default gateway, when my lease expires, my MAC address, a number of other things. So ipconfig/all is used to get the status of your network interfaces, find out what IP addresses are configured on those network interfaces. There's ping, so I can ping like www.trainsignal.com, and this sends a test message out over the network, comes back, and it tells me the response time to that website. There's MD to make a directory, so I just made a directory called test. If I do dir, you see here this directory called test. I can cd into that directory with the change directory command. I can cd ... into the previous directory. That's what that means, cd ... And then I can also rd test, which is remove directory, and you can see test is gone. I can delete test.txt, and I can delete test1.txt. All right, so those are our different command line options that are very useful when it comes to working with the Windows operating system at the command prompt. All right, so now let's talk about the operating system disk structure. Now, an A+ technician should be able to manage disk drives, file systems, folders or directories, and files. So let's learn a little bit more about these topics. So first off, you have disks, and disks have different types of partitions that are created on those disks, and those partitions can have different types like active, primary, extended, and logical. You can have a limited number of primary partitions, and after that you should use extended partitions where you can put a number of logical partitions inside the extended partition to get even more. The active partition, that's your boot partition. With inside partitions, you have file systems, and file systems have to have a specific format. Now today I would use NTFS to format any Windows file system. Now inside the file system you're going to have directories. Directories are those folders, just like I created with the MD or make directory command. And then you navigate the directory tree using CD, or if you're using Windows Explorer, like this, if I go into my computer, I go into C drive, I go into Windows, then Windows XP, and then I can go back up a level here. Let's go into this directory, then into this directory, then this directory. And you can see my path up here, C colon /Windows / and then this directory / sp uninstall. So from here, if I was at the command prompt, I'd type cd space ... which is the same as clicking this up arrow here. Or say I wanted to go to this directory explicitly, I could say cd space Windows / and then this subdirectory name. Okay, and then inside those directories there's files. We found out how to create files. Of course, you can use Notepad, you can use Word, Excel. You can create files with just about any application, and many applications create files on their own. There's different kinds of file extensions, like text files have a .txt, Word documents have a .doc, Excel spreadsheets have a .xls, and so on and so forth. So every file has its own extension, and with that extension usually comes some association to an application. That way, if I double click on a .doc file, it opens up Word automatically and brings that document in. We looked at attributes with the attrib command and how you can have system files, hidden files, read-only files, and archival files. And then there's permissions, and we'll talk more about NTFS permissions inside our security video. But basically, if you go into any file or folder on the system, you right-click, you can go into sharing and security, and here is the NTFS security. That's in the security tab, and this is where you define who or what group of people has what access to this file or folder. All right, so that's the OS disk structure. All right, as an A+ technician, there's a number of utilities you should be familiar with. There's disk management tools like disk defrag. If I go to my hard drive, right-click on it, go into Properties, and I can go into Tools right here. And this is where I can use the Windows version of Check Disk. I can do disk defragmentation right here with Defrag Now, or I can back up this disk using the Windows Backup program. And you can access that all by right-clicking on the disk, going to Properties, and then clicking on the Tools tab. All right, so that's defrag, NT-backup, and check disk and format. These are all the command line versions, but you can access the GUI versions, like I said, by going into Windows Explorer, going to the disk, right-clicking on it, going to Properties, then Tools. Then there's System Management Tools. So there's the Task Manager. I can right-click on here and go to Task Manager. Shows me my running applications, processes, performance, and networking status. There's the Device Manager. And I can get to Device Manager if I right-click on my computer, go into Hardware, then Device Manager. Shows me all my running devices, and I can troubleshoot those devices and their drivers. All right, there is msconfig.exe. Let's run that. msconfig is a system configuration utility. It allows you to configure how you want the system to start up. You can configure the system INI, the Win INI, boot INI. These are all special files. You can configure services as to whether or not you want those to start up when the system restarts. And you can configure what you want to start when your computer starts. So it's a very handy configuration tool for your computer. Now you can probably access most of these things in some other way, but it gives you a single place to go to configure all of these different things. All right, there's regedit and regedit 32 used to edit the registry. We looked at these in a previous video. We already talked about the command prompt. I showed you how that works. There's event viewer, of course, used to go and see what events have happened on this computer. Think of it like a system log program that shows you what log entries have happened on this computer in different categories. So there's a security log, there's an application log, and there's a system log. These are standard. These other two logs I have down here are optional that may or may not be installed with your computer. All right, there's the system restore. Let's see, to go into system restore, here we go. So I go to Start, Programs, Accessories, System Tools, and then System Restore. If I click on that, this brings up a great tool that allows me to take a snapshot of my operating system's configuration. So primarily the registry and like what applications are installed. And then these are taken as a snapshot, and they're called restore points or checkpoints. And so I can either choose to create a restore point when this system was last snapshotted, and then I can also choose to create a new restore point. So let's say I want to restore from an earlier time. On the calendar here, you can see the big bold highlighted dates. These are dates when the system had a system checkpoint taken. It tells you the time and the date, and I can choose to bring my system back to that time or date. So this is a very handy tool when it comes to troubleshooting system configurations. So say you install some new application, maybe it's a demo, you try it out, it doesn't work, you uninstall it, and then after you uninstall it, you reboot your system and your system doesn't work anymore, it won't boot. Well, you could go into Windows recovery mode, you could use system restore, and you could move your computer back to the last system restore that was taken. Then there's remote desktop. Remote desktop is a way to remotely manage any computer. It could be a server, it could be a desktop or laptop, and it allows you to do remote control to that computer. It's a very amazing, powerful tool. It's free, it's included in the Windows operating system, but it has to be enabled. So if I minimize this, I go to My Computer, Properties, and then go into the Remote tab. Here's where I can check to allow users to connect remotely to my computer. It tells me my computer name, but if you don't have DNS, you can use the IP address. And here's where I would select the remote users that can access this computer remotely using Remote Desktop. All right, then there's file management tools. So we looked at a trib already, but Windows Explorer is what's running right here when I click on my computer. I can also go to Start, Run, and type Explorer. And keep in mind that this is not IE Explorer. This is Explorer, Windows Explorer, used to explore files and directories on your hard drive. So if I type that, it brings up Windows Explorer in the default path, which is My Documents. All right, so optimizing Windows performance. Now, when Windows is first installed, this is typically the optimal performance the operating system will ever have. And that's because the more applications you install and the more applications are used and services are starting, the more the hard drive just tends to reduce in performance because things get defragmented, the registry grows, a lot of processes start up when your computer starts because of all these applications that were installed. One thing you can do to get your performance back is you can check out your virtual memory settings, make sure that those are ideal. You can defrag your hard drive. You can remove temporary files, such as those files created by Internet Explorer. You can stop unneeded services. You can uninstall unneeded applications. You can look at your startup folder. If I go to Start, Programs, Startup right here, for example, I install an application and it put this in my startup folder. Well, maybe I don't want that starting every time my computer starts. I have to wait for that to finish starting up when maybe I'm not even needing it. So why take up system resources all the time to have this application running that you really didn't want started in the first place? Now, there's also a way to go into the registry and remove applications that start through the registry when the system starts up. All right, so that's optimizing Windows OS performance. So next up is the boot sequence. What is the basic boot sequence? When you push that power on button on the front of the PC, what happens? What does the computer do? Well, it goes through the post test or the power on self-test. This is where it tests out all the hardware, the required hardware that's connected to that computer, the motherboard, the RAM, the processor, keyboard, mouse, and video. Make sure that all the required components are present. Then there's the MBR, or the master boot record. That's accessed on the active partition of your hard drive, and hopefully it finds the operating system and it begins booting your computer. So when it looks on the MBR on that hard drive, it looks for the NT loader. The NT loader is what runs, and it starts the boot INI. Your operating system is selected from there. If your operating system is DOS, which it's probably not these days, but just FYI, it would boot bootsect.dos. Now, if it's Windows, then it runs ntdetect, then the NTOS kernel, then HALDLL, then the HKey local machine /system registry key, and this is where the device drivers are stored for all your system devices. So if you install a new device and then Windows won't boot, most likely there's something wrong with the device driver that's located in this registry key. Then WinLogon starts, and that's where you log on to the Windows XP workstation by pressing Control-Alt-Delete. Now what if your computer won't boot from a CD? Keep in mind that you should go to the BIOS boot order. It's in the BIOS where the computer knows what type of media to look for to boot up. So does it go to the floppy first? Does it go to the hard drive or the CD-ROM? Does it go to a USB flash drive? These all might be options, and they're put in different orders. So whatever it finds first, that's where it's going to go. And it could be that the CD-ROM drive is not even selected in any piece of that order. So the CD-ROM drive is not selected as a valid boot device. And then your computer's never going to boot from the CD-ROM. So that's something to keep in mind when it comes to booting up an operating system CD or any other bootable media off your CD drive. All right, so now let's talk about boot recovery. Now, we covered the boot recovery back in the Essentials Troubleshooting video, but let's review it and go into a little bit more depth. Now, for the A+ exam, the objectives say that you need to demonstrate the ability to recover your operating system, and that includes boot methods, recovery console, ASR, and ERD. So let's take a look at each one of these different important pieces of boot recovery. So first off, there's the boot methods. So I've listed out the different boot methods here, and we looked at each one of these different boot methods in a previous video. How when the system boots up, you press F8, and that gets you into the different types of booting choices you have, or booting methods you have when your Windows operating system's booting up. So there's Windows Safe Mode, which is in Windows 2000 or XP, and that's where only basic files and drivers are accessed and loaded when the system boots up. So the system comes up in safe mode, and you can see the resolution is very low, and you have a limited number of devices. There's safe mode with networking, same thing as safe mode, but gives you the ability to access the network. There's safe mode with a command prompt only, meaning no graphical display. You can enable boot logging, and that's when it sends a log of everything that happens when the system boots to ntbootlog.txt in the /winnt directory. There's the enable VGA mode if you want VGA mode when you're booting. There's the last known good configuration. This is a great way to go back to previous device drivers before you made some change to your device drivers. So the last known good configuration is created. It's kind of a snapshot of the system drivers that's created when the system successfully boots. So if your system won't successfully boot, you can choose to go back to this last known good configuration and hopefully get your system running again. There's debug mode. That's where the system booting process sends debug messages to another machine connected over a serial port. There's the recovery console. The recovery console is very cool. It gives you a command line prompt to access your Windows system. Although BART-PE, in my opinion, would be a better, more friendly choice than the recovery console. Then there's boot to restore point, and that's what I was talking about, those system restores. If you choose to, you can go back to a system restore point using this boot methods menu that you got to by pressing F8. All right, to get access to the recovery console, you insert the Windows CD and you run d:/i386/winnt32.exe/command cons or cmd-cons. This installs the recovery console on your computer. Now to access the Windows 2000 ERD, which is what the emergency repair disk is called in Windows 2000, you have to create 4 boot disks and an emergency repair disk. Now to create it, you run the makeboot.exe program in the boot disk directory on the Windows CD, then create the ERD in the backup program. So there's a lot to it. Windows XP ASR, or Automated System Recovery, makes it a lot easier. This way, you've got the ERD function completely integrated into the ASR recovery utility. This way you use a combination of your Windows CD and the ERD to recover the Windows operating system if it won't boot. Now, some common ways to recover from booting errors I've listed out here. First off, use your troubleshooting methodology to narrow the issue. Don't just jump into the problem. Have the Windows CD available. Perform a Windows repair if you cannot fix the Windows booting issues. Keep in mind that hardware always could go bad, so it could be the hard drive or some other piece of hardware. Keep in mind that applications and drivers added after the operating system are frequently the issues when it comes to a system not booting. Then make sure that you do a clean installation instead of an upgrade or some other reinstallation. I mean, that's an ideal situation. Now, many times the quickest way to solve your problem is to do a reinstallation or a repair of the operating system using the Windows CD. Now, many times when I see something I've never seen before, I first turn to the internet and documentation. Other recovery options are using the recovery CDs and the recovery partition. However, be careful of the ways that the applications on the CD or partition help you recover. Many times what their version of help is just to reinstall the whole operating system as it was when you bought the computer with the device drivers and all the silly third-party applications. So maybe that's what you want, but if not, make sure you don't accidentally do that with the manufacturer's recovery CD. All right, now let's talk about error messages. Now, as an A+ technician, there's some common error messages that you should be familiar with, and these are taken from the A+ objectives. All right, so first off, there's the invalid boot disk. This typically means you have to reinstall the operating system. There's the inaccessible boot device. This is usually a stop 7B, and it means you could not load the driver for the boot disk. There's the missing NT loader. This means you most likely need to reinstall the OS. There's the NT-OS kernel.exe missing or corrupt. This means there's an error in the boot INI. There's the operating system not found error. This means you may need to reinstall the operating system. And then once Windows starts up, there's the device or service failed to start message, and this is something you need to go examine in the Windows event log. There's the Windows startup error message where it says a device or program in the registry was not found. This is a registry issue, something you need to go clean up. Now, then we have Dr. Watson, and with Windows NXP, there's this utility called Dr. Watson that may intercept any program crashes and take a memory dump of what happened. It may then display helpful information to assist in solving the problem. Now today, Dr. Watson is called error reporting, or they work together to report the error that Dr. Watson found to Microsoft to help suggest some possible resolutions. You could have a system lockup. Now, if there's no error message, you'll have to reboot, but you should spend some time trying to find out what caused that system lockup. We're going to talk about blue screens in just a second. You've already seen what a blue screen looks like. With printing, you could have the print spool stalled or incorrect incompatible driver for print error message. This means you may need to restart the print spooler or replace the drivers on your printer. There's device drivers. We already talked about how to replace and roll back system device drivers. You go into the device manager, of course, to do that. Then there's applications that you may need to install, start, or load, or they may have some failure and they might not start. In that case, you'll most likely need to call the third-party application provider. All right, then there's the registry. You have some registry repair tools and registry editing tools. Worst case, you can restore from a system point without having to go in and edit the registry manually. All right, then there's reboots. Keep in mind that rebooting your PC can be very effective when you have a problem. It can clean up the memory, it can close and reopen all applications, cleans up temporary files, and it reverses what the user may have done to cause the problem in the first place. Now, if after the reboot the problem's still there, then at least you know the problem is reproducible. I'm not saying that a reboot should be your first step to take as soon as a problem is reported. You want to make sure you do due diligence and find out what the user was doing, and if there's something that can correct the problem without having to reboot. Then there's the event viewer, and we talked about the event viewer. It's used to show you events on your computer. Make sure that the first thing you do is you go check the event viewer when you have a problem with your operating system. Inside the event viewer, you have your system, application, and security logs. All right, now we can talk about blue screens. In a previous video, I showed you the blue screen of death, and I was able to create one with a special registry hack. Now, the blue screen of death, or the BSOD, is that solid screen that appears when the operating system suffers a major crash. Typically, there'll be a stop code on the blue screen. You should note the stop code because it can help you tremendously in figuring out why the operating system crashed. Many times, this is caused by bad hardware or drivers. If it happens during boot up, you should try using safe mode. And a stop code with 0D usually indicates a video card issue. Now, as I talked about a little bit earlier, a new feature in Windows XP is error reporting. When a problem occurs, such as a blue screen, Windows will take a memory dump of the program and it will send that off to Microsoft to see if they have any suggestions to resolve it, or they can take that information and try to develop some bug fixes or patches later. Now, error reporting can be configured in your computer's advanced properties. If you're using Windows XP and you suffer a blue screen of death, upon reboot, it will tell you that your computer stopped unexpectedly and offer to help diagnose the issue. This is a very helpful feature of Windows XP. All right, then there's Windows PE and BART. I recommend BART, or BART PE as it's called. Windows PE is used primarily by manufacturers. BART PE is something you can download from the internet, and with your Windows operating system CD, you can build your own bootable BART PE CD. And I showed you how this CD is booted in a previous video. It's freeware, and it's a great tool to help you boot up to a fully functioning CD version of Windows that runs in RAM, doesn't run off your hard drive. Then you have full access to your hard drive to go in and resolve whatever problem you might be having with Windows that caused your system not to boot. All right, some more important utilities we need to talk about. We talked about a number of these. We talked about defrag, NT-backup, check disk, and format. Going on down here, I showed you device manager, task manager, computer manager. I haven't showed you that in this video. Let's go into Start, Settings, Administrative Tools, and Computer Management. This is actually an MMC that points you to other common applications. So most of these other applications could be accessed by going to the individual application by themselves, but computer management is a great single place to go to give you a variety of different tools. So here you have the event viewer, shared folders, local users and groups, performance logs and alerts, device manager for hardware. Then for storage, you have disk defragmenter. You have disk manager to manage your disk. And then down here you have your different services and applications that you can control with the computer management application. So it's a very powerful tool or combination of different tools that are all available in one place. All right, so we talked about computer management. We talked about regedit and regedit 32, msconfig, and performance monitor. Let me show you performance monitor. Oh, no, let's see. We want to go into Settings, Control Panel, Administrative Tools, and then in here is Performance. Now, this can actually be accessed using the Computer Management tool as well, but I'm going to go in here to Performance, and the Performance Monitor is a system performance monitoring tool. Allows you to monitor CPU, memory, disk, network, different applications, just about any type of performance you would want to monitor on your Windows computer can be monitored with Performance Monitor. So here I can add new counters, they call them, things you want to run performance on. And here's different categories of things I can graph, like print queues, disks, Outlook statistics, memory, job options, VMware if you have that installed, terminal services, TCP, The list just goes on and on of all the different things you can graph or chart or keep track of. All right, so that's Performance Monitor. Okay, I showed you System Restore. I showed you Event Viewer, Remote Desktop, and Remote Assistance. Remote Assistance is on that same tab inside Windows, My Computer, Properties, Remote. Here's Remote Assistance right here. And Remote Assistance, if I click on Remote Assistance, it'll tell us exactly what it is. Basically, it's a tool that allows you to request remote assistance over the internet. It says this is a convenient way for a friend in another location to connect to your computer from another computer running a compatible operating system such as XP and walk you through a solution. So it's an interesting feature. It's not one I commonly use, but perhaps you'll find a use for it. To me, remote desktop is much more important. All right, there's the System File Checker, which checks out system files to verify their integrity. We talked about Windows Explorer, the attrib command. The extract command is a command line tool used to extract Windows cabinet files. Many of the Windows system files come in these compressed files called cabinet files. With extract, you're able to get those files out of that cabinet file or uncompress them. And I showed you the edit command. That's the text editor that runs in the command line tool. We also looked at sysinternals. These are free tools available from Microsoft that allow you to do a variety of different and pretty cool things with your Windows computer. And then there's the preventative maintenance aspect of this. How do you prevent operating system troubles before they happen? Well, first off, you clean up your disk and you defragment your disk. Now to run disk cleanup, you go into My Computer, go into Properties on your disk drive, and here you'll see a disk cleanup button. If you click that, it's on the General tab, by the way, it goes through and it calculates how much disk space I might be able to free up on my C drive by using this wizard and removing unneeded files like temporary files or compressing unused files that I haven't used in a long time. So I have quite a few files on my C drive, so it's going to take a while to sit there and scan through the files. I'm going to cancel that. And let's go back now that you've seen the disk cleanup tool. Of course, make sure you install antivirus and anti-spyware. These software applications need to be installed to protect you. They're just not optional anymore. Antivirus software and anti-spyware software has to be updated very frequently. You know, I would say if you can, try to get those updates from your provider every hour, or set your software to go check every hour automatically so that you don't have to sit there and check every hour. And pull down those antivirus and anti-spyware software updates. Next, make sure you use supported hardware that's on the hardware compatibility list. Use the proper drivers. Make sure your drivers are up to date. You don't want to use some old buggy drivers that are version 1.0. Make sure you shut down your computer properly. You don't want to just pull the power. Go to Windows Update periodically, and even better, use automatic updates. If I go to Start, Settings, Control Panel, let's see, in here we have automatic updates. Where is it? I'm missing it. It should be right in here somewhere. Here we go, in alphabetical order. Isn't that amazing? Automatic updates. If I click on that, this allows me to go in here and check automatic, and I can say every day I want this computer to be updated at 3 o'clock a.m. I want it to contact Microsoft, pull down any new patches, and apply them for me. Now what I've got chosen right now is download updates for me and then prompt me to install them. So there's a few different ways to configure it, but full automatic updating is obviously the best. All right, we talked about System Restore, but make sure you have System Restore configured on a schedule so that your restore points will be taken automatically each night when you're not using your computer. Back up your user data on a schedule. So every night or at least every week, make sure you get all your home computer files backed up. Now, if this is a business, definitely every night, make sure you get that data backed up. Make sure those tapes are good and it can be restored. Test that restore. Make sure the tapes are good and make sure the tapes are stored off-site. So in case the building burns down, all your data isn't lost. I suggest a daily reboot of your computer and even some servers if they're very frequently used servers or like Windows terminal servers that get hit really hard. Many times a daily reboot will keep those computers fresh. Periodic reinstall. I don't know how many people's computers I've come to who used to have Windows 95, then they upgraded to Windows 98, then Windows 2000, then Windows XP, and they've had the same applications installed on there for the last 6 years, and the computer is just so bogged down with all these different updates and upgrades and patches and applications. The computer just needs to be wiped out, reinstalled, and start fresh. I know for novice users that's very painful to do, but for A-plus technicians like yourself, it should be a much easier task than it would be for a novice user. All right, now we have an important task at hand, something that I want to demonstrate to you, and I think it's going to be very beneficial both in your knowledge and for helping you on the A-plus exam. What I'm going to demonstrate is how to upgrade from a Windows 2000 professional computer to Windows XP. It's not a hard process, but I think it's important that you see exactly how this works. So to do this, I'm going to go over here to my virtual computer. And here I have a Windows 2000 professional computer. Now this is a fully functioning running system. All I've done is I've inserted the Windows XP CD-ROM into the hard drive. So I'm going to go to my computer. I'm going to go to this CD-ROM, this Windows XP CD-ROM, and it's going to automatically run this welcome screen that's going to come up. And it says, what do you want to do? Well, I want to install Windows XP. I want to upgrade this computer. Now, if I was going to format the hard drive and start fresh, I would power off the computer, and then I would insert the CD, power the computer on, and start installing Windows XP by formatting the hard drive and do a fresh, clean install. Now, in this case, I'm going to do an upgrade. So here I can do an advanced installation, but what I want to do is the default, which is an upgrade. So I have to accept the licensing agreement. I have to type in my product key. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause the video. I'm going to type in my product key, and I'm going to resume recording in just a second. All right, I'm back. I typed in my product key, and I clicked Next. Now it says some copies of files may have been updated. Do you want to download updated setup files? Normally, I would say yes. If you're going to do this in the real world for the purposes of this demonstration, to get the operating system installed as quickly as possible, I'm going to say no. All right, now it says it's preparing the installation and it's copying the installation files. Notice over here on the left it says that setup will complete in approximately 51 minutes. So I'm not going to keep you on this video recording, watching this for the full 51 minutes because I just want you to get the idea of generally how this works. So let's at least get through the part here where the computer is going to restart, because I want you to see how that reboot works and then what happens exactly after that. So give it just a second longer. All right, and here we have a choice to select the operating system we want to start. Do we want to start Windows XP Pro setup or Windows 2000? Well, we want to continue the setup, so I'm going to press enter there on Windows XP Pro setup. And it says it's starting Windows setup, which is good. That's what we want. And there's the first Windows XP logo we get. All right, in just a second, we should see something about our process starting to install Windows XP. Here we go. So now we're getting a progress bar, and it still says it's preparing the installation. After that, you can see that we have the steps left to install Windows and then finalize the installation. So I know this process is going to take quite a while, about another 50 minutes or so. So with that, I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to come back and start recording again as soon as the installation and the preparation process has completed. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, and after about 45 minutes, the upgrade process from Windows 2000 Pro to Windows XP has completed, and here it says we need to log in. So I'm going to type my old Windows 2000 Pro administrator password, press enter, and we'll log on to our new Windows XP workstation for the first time. The upgrade process was very easy. It just took some time to complete, but actually upgrading the system required very little from the end user. Here we have Windows XP. Comes up with a variety of, balloon messages. And if you'll notice on the desktop here, just about all these icons are the exact same icons that were on our Windows 2000 workstation. And if I go to Start, actually if I went into like My Documents, all the same documents, programs, applications, all those things should still be here after the upgrade process. So the upgrade went very well, didn't have any problems, didn't have to answer but just a few questions at the start. Very simple upgrade process. All right, some things to keep in mind before you upgrade, of course, would be the hardware. Is your hardware going to support the new requirements of Windows XP? Are your applications going to be compatible with Windows XP? Make sure you back up your data before you perform the Windows XP upgrade process in case something goes wrong in that upgrade process. As you can see, the upgrade process was very painless, and we completed it with very little to do, except for the time it took to actually complete the process. So now let's talk about further operating system training. Say that you get through your A+ exam and you pass and you become an A+ certified technician, and perhaps you're looking for some more in-depth coverage of Windows XP or some other more advanced training topics like Windows 2003 Server, Linux, wireless networking, or Cisco. I highly want to recommend the Windows XP training video, as it's a video that I created, and it's available from trainsignal.com. And of course, they have a number of other excellent training videos covering a variety of topics. And with that, we've reached the end of this video. In this video, we covered Windows operating system information as it relates to the A+ Technician exam. We talked about Windows operating system command line tools, disk structure, graphical administration tools, how to optimize the Windows OS, what to do about boot recovery if you should have a problem. We learned about the boot sequence. We learned how to deal with error messages on your Windows computer. We talked about some different system utilities, and then we learned about preventative maintenance in the Windows operating system. And with that, we've reached the end of the A+ Technician operating system video. Thank you very much.